Hey, welcome to the Get Out of Debt Guy podcast. I'm Steve Rhode, the original Get Out of Debt Guy, and today we're cutting through the noise and pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to get out of debt. Because let's be honest, too many people are sold a solution before they even understand the problem. They get talked into some costly, wrong program that drains their wallet and delays their freedom. We've seen it happen time and time again. So today, we're going to demystify the process. We'll talk about the real steps, the mind shifts, and the warning signs to watch out for so you can make smart decisions and not emotional ones. And as always, Damon Day is here with me, the new Get Out of Debt Guy. Say hello, Damon.
Hello, Damon.
Whether you're drowning in minimum payments, being hounded by collectors, or just sick and tired of feeling stuck, this episode is for you. So let's talk honestly about how to get out of debt without wasting time or money on solutions that don't actually work. Let's get into it. Damon, this is a topic that, we've talked about for years, about how people make the most emotional wrong choice that they can to get out of debt because they're being sold a solution rather than actually thinking about their problems. So let's talk about it. What are the big things that you see going on now and forever when it comes to people making choices about how to get out of debt?
Well, today is going to be a somewhat boring topic that we're going to try to make not boring.
Way to sell it.
Way to sell it. I'm right up there with you. Hey, I'm just being honest, Steve. But Steve used the word demystify, and I think that's a good word because what we wanted to do in today's podcast was really educate you on the different things that are going to be coming at you whenever you go online and you do Google searches for, ways to get out of debt, things like that. You fill out a form, you see these, mailers online or in your spam folder, hopefully on consolidation loans. We just wanted to go through and really educate you on what these different things were, how they actually work, so you can be educated when you are on the phone talking to, I'm doing air quotes, a debt relief consultant, if you will, that you know what the program is that they're trying to convince you to do. Because the more you know, right, the better off you are. And so it's really important because I still see this all the time where I'll be talking to somebody and they'll say something like, oh, I consolidated my debt, like 5 months ago. And I'll start asking questions. And it's like, wait a minute. You didn't consolidate your debt. You hired a debt settlement company who convinced you that they were consolidating your debt, but that's not what they were doing.
They were consolidating your monthly payments and then not paying your creditors. But let's take one step back because this is the same pattern I've seen in all my many decades. So the way it works is you're going along, life's good. You're thinking, well, I'm really enjoying life. We're having a really good time. And then tomorrow you're thinking, how come I don't have as much money as I thought? And then the following day you're thinking, oh my God, things are really getting tight. And then the next day you're thinking, oh crap, I got to do something. I need to make this pain go away now. And so you generally either, I don't listen to the radio anymore, so I don't know if they're radio ads, but you generally either see an ad on TV or...
Steve, hold on.
Yeah.
Video killed the radio star.
Okay. or you see something online, or you do a quick search, and then here's the most amazing thing. You call one of these heavy marketing debt relief companies, and guess what? They're going to have a magic solution to solve your problem. You just have to buy it.
Yeah. So what we wanted to do is talk about these different companies, these different strategies, and really go through it. And Steve's in a great position because he ran one of them for quite a few years back in the 30s or 40s or something like that, I think it was.
Yeah, credit counseling group.
Yeah. So if you want to think about these options that are going to be coming at you, we're going to be talking about the main ones that people think about or they're getting sold on. But when you start filling out these forms, and you're going to start, getting into forums and looking at things like, the Dave Ramsey strategy, you're going to look at companies, credit counseling companies or debt management plans. You're going to be looking at debt settlement companies or debt negotiation companies. And then you're also going to be looking at bankruptcy. So today we're going to break down these options and, what the costs that are typically associated with them are, and more importantly, how they work and how they will potentially affect you in your situation. So you can be educated when you are speaking to these companies and deciding if it's a strategy that you should be looking into.
All right, you're driving this bus. Which one are we tackling first?
I think the easiest way to start it is I look at it as a left to right scale on how most people look at this on kind of a timeline where you got Dave Ramsey kind of on the left side and you work your way down to the credit counseling approach, a debt settlement approach, and then a bankruptcy approach. Not that they should be looked at in that order, but that's just typically the way it kind of progresses.
Yeah, that's the thing. People always here's a statement I always hate is bankruptcy is your last thing that you should consider.
Yeah.
Because they should all be considered at the same time.
Maybe
you
instead
need
of
to
a
find the right
timeline,
one.
we should say, we'll put it on a circle.
Yeah.
Everything.
It needs to be a scatter shot, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So which one? Go for it.
So let's talk about Dave Ramsey, because I've got a lot of things I like about Dave Ramsey's approach and a lot of things I don't like about Dave Ramsey's approach. But the stuff that he talks about is plain, simple, common sense, financial stuff. What I don't like about Dave Ramsey's approach to getting out of debt is he takes a one size fits all essentially for everybody, and it's Dave's way or the highway. And that's the biggest feedback that I get from clients when I'm talking to them. They say, I explored Dave Ramsey. I went through his financial piece, but here's the thing that we didn't like, or we tried it for 6 months. And it was just, in their opinion, for them specifically, not for everybody, it was too extreme, or it was something they liked the concepts, but they didn't like the idea that they had to live like a pauper, for 5 years or something like that. And again, for some people, that's a good strategy and that's what they need. But it's hard to have something where it's like, everybody has to do it the same way, no matter what the situation, no matter what the circumstances. And there are other alternatives if you look at Dave's strategy. And if you like those ideas and you think it will fit really well in your life to help you get out of debt, then that's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you look at it and you're like, that wasn't written for me, then there are other options that you can look at.
Well, let's just clarify one thing too, is that if you like his approach, right? The eat beans and rice for 5 years or whatever, or take, all these years to pay it off. If you like that and you're comfortable with it, then, yay for you. But that doesn't mean that the math really adds up. Yeah. So, it's like you need to evaluate every solution. First, how do you feel about it? And secondly, what's the truth about it? And are you trying to fix the past or fix the future? So let's, do you have more to say about the Dave Ramsey?
Yeah, like I was even talking to a client last week and Dave Ramsey came up and I was talking to them about the strategy of, we could combine pieces of this with pieces of another strategy and say, we were talking about debt settlement and negotiating the debts down. They owed about like $80,000. And we were talking about this idea of, if we negotiated that 80 grand down to 40 or 50 grand, and then you put the Dave Ramsey kind of budgeting and lifestyle principles in place up to whatever your limits were, that would help accelerate the settlement strategy that we were looking at. And it would help you moving forward once we were out of the debt to, be on a budget and live within your means. And so there's a lot of good things you can take out of that. And we were just talking about, instead of paying back the whole 80,000, which you could do at the cost of, funds in your retirement
future
account and things like that. You could use those concepts on a day-to-day basis to raise those funds to negotiate the debt down and get out of the debt even faster. So rather than Dave Ramsey for 5 years, you could only Dave Ramsey for 2. And then we could be done and move forward. So it's never an all or nothing. We can take bits and pieces of this idea or that idea and apply it to these other different strategies.
Yeah. Well, that's what you're best at, is creating custom solutions for people based on their own individual situation, because there's no two situations that are alike.
Yeah. I had a client, I think a month ago, we're talking about something similar, but we were using that in the context of talking about a bankruptcy. And for that client's circumstances, a Chapter 7 really made a lot of sense. And they really wanted to kind of, Dave Ramsey their way out of it. And I was like, we can. And we just went over those numbers. And I said, but think about this. What if we filed the bankruptcy. In their situation, they could keep the house, keep the cars. They weren't going to lose anything. In fact, on the surface, nobody would even know they had filed. Their lifestyle wouldn't have to change. There's no tow trucks in the driveway or anything like that. And I said, but then we can really incorporate Dave Ramsey's concepts if that's how you want to do it. But now instead of eating beans and rice to just make Chase whole or make Citibank whole, we can use that saved money to accelerate your retirement, actually catch up your retirement savings, because they were only about 10 years from retirement. They had nothing saved at that point. So again, same thing. We can utilize some of those concepts that you like to do better moving forward. But if we can wipe out this, $50,000 in debt immediately or as quickly as possible, now this lifestyle sacrifice that you're making, doing it Dave's way, can now go towards your future rather than the CEO of Chase's future.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the issues that I've always taken exception to is this idea that it's more morally right or more Christian or whatever for you to repay your creditors, because that's what Dave says. And when you do the math, if you want to do that and that makes you feel better, that's your choice. But understand that you're going to piss away $1.5 million or more in retirement savings to feel better today, to solve a problem that was created yesterday.
Yeah.
So if that's what you want to do, you should do it, but you need to know.
And it's okay to walk through that. I'm not here to tell somebody what they're doing or not doing with their money is right or wrong, because I always tell clients, it's not my money, it's not my life, it's not my credit, it's yours.
Right. I just want you to know.
Yeah,
that's all.
My job is not to say, no, you're wrong and I'm right. That's what Dave does. That's not what I do.
Right.
My job is to support you in whatever decision you make, but it's also to educate you on those options. So for instance, if you really want to, pay it back, and I'm saying, hey, look, a bankruptcy would make more sense and you really don't want to do that, that's fine. But maybe your situation is such that by not filing that bankruptcy, you're going to be well short of your retirement goals, and that's going to cause you to potentially be a burden on your 3 kids. And then maybe we phrase it like that and say, okay, I know you really, from a moral standpoint, want to pay these debts back, but should your children have to pay for that?
The funny thing is, you've had it happen many times too, and I have in my decades of helping people, is you explain all of this to somebody. Somebody comes in and goes like, I'm absolutely not going to file bankruptcy. That's immoral. That's the last thing I should do. It's the last thing. And then you explain everything to them. And you ask them, okay, what do you think sounds most reasonable for your situation after I've explained that? And they might say, well, bankruptcy. And at first you say, well, you didn't want to do that when you came in. Well, why would I not want to do it?
Yeah. Well, the issue with bankruptcy is there's just so much misinformation about it, and just kind of, I don't know, fear is part of it, but just like this cultural thing that we've kind of built into this whole thing, like bankruptcy means failure, but businesses do it all the time, and they get
churches
multi-million-dollar bonuses because they call it strategic deleveraging.
That's right. And
we're fixing
their
the
stock
balance
goes
sheets.
up.
Yeah, we're fixing the balance sheet. Like, oh my God, that guy's a genius. Give him a raise.
That's right. We're taking responsibility for our, terrible financial situation. So the stock goes up.
Yeah. And and the other example I have too, it happens a lot where people say, well, I want to make sure I repay all my debt. And then I say, well, after you file bankruptcy and legally discharge yourself of it, or after you negotiate and settle your debt and you're legally you don't have to pay it anymore, you can, once you're in a spot where you're doing much better financially, so everything's covered, you can reach back out to those creditors that you settled the accounts with or you discharged in a bankruptcy, and you can ask if you could send the rest of the money. And
why would I do that?
Nobody has ever said, ever, like, that sounds like a good idea.
No, nobody.
Everybody says, why would I send them more money if I don't have to? I'm like, exactly. Why would you?
Well, when I went, bankrupt in the late 80s or early 90s, whenever it was, I tried to repay my creditors after the bankruptcy. And what they actually said to me was, please stop.
Yeah, we don't have a button for that. We don't know what to do with the money.
Yeah, we don't have any place to apply it. Please don't send it.
Yeah. We're so broken up over the fact that you didn't pay us the money that we can't take it now.
Yeah, so broken up. I like your bankruptcy story. So broken up, the Capital One gives you a new credit card.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. We can't take your money for the old stuff, but if you want a new card, you can
We
use
got
that, and you can send us money for that one.
It's all a game.
Oh, it's absolutely a game. I always tell clients, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game.
Right.
I'm just showing you the rules and how to play it. That's all.
Yeah, well, it's like, comparing two other options, talking about credit counseling and debt settlement. I remember a time when Bank of America told people who were calling about credit counseling, we don't settle debt.
Yeah.
And yet they're settling debt every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, so let's jump into, okay, what is credit counseling? Because this is another one of those options that people are going to see. Sometimes they call it debt management plans. In fact, this is the option that you mentioned Bank of America. Bank of America is kind of famous for this, although other creditors do too. You can't afford your payment. You call it Bank of America. I can't afford this $250 payment. It's due on Monday. I can't pay it. Can you help me out? And they say, well, there's really nothing we can do, but you can call this number if you need help.
Right.
And they
Right.
give you the number to a credit counseling program, which is the type of program that Steve ran for many, many years back in the day. And so, Steve, enlighten us a little bit about how credit counseling programs work and, the ins and outs of what would happen if you enrolled into one.
Well, everything's on a continuum and things constantly change. So when credit counseling programs first evolved, they were there as actually was established by a group of debt collectors that started a nonprofit group that wanted to help people with financial literacy and budgeting and helping them to find a way to repay what they could afford.
Mm-hmm.
So back in the day when I started a credit counseling group, 94, the situation was much different than it was today. Because back then, if you couldn't afford to pay your creditors, when you enrolled into a credit counseling program, your payment was immediately cut in half. The interest always went to zero.
Yeah.
So you instantly got breathing room that you didn't have before.
Yeah. And real quick, just let me interject. So you started that just a few years after your bankruptcy. And that
Yeah.
was the bankruptcy was kind of like your driving force, towards getting into that, because you didn't do that before the bankruptcy. It was like
No.
that experience of going through that made you want to say, hey, I need to figure out how to help other people so they can avoid what I had to go through.
Right. When I went through my bankruptcy, I did everything that people normally do and look for solutions. And one of the groups that I contacted at the time was a credit counseling group, and I couldn't afford half the payment. And they said, too bad, so sad. And, there was no other hope. And so after living through the experience myself, I thought, man, I got a different perspective on this. And there's got to be a way to give people real advice holistically, give them the whole picture and help them out. So, but here's how credit counseling changed. By the early 2000s, the creditors kind of got it into their heads that, you know what, we could kind of really control this industry because we're giving them money when they send payments to us. So a credit counseling group doesn't really consolidate your debt. You send them one payment, they cut it up and send it out individually to the creditors.
Mm-hmm.
And the creditors back then would give the credit counseling groups about 15% of the money that they sent in every month. And that's how they funded themselves. So in the early 2000s, the creditors decided, you know what, we can take kind of more control over this industry. And instead of giving them a percentage of money that they send in, we're just going to arbitrarily give them money based on how we feel about them. And so we're really going to turn them into collectors for us.
A
And your
kinder, gentler form of debt collection is what I tell clients.
Right.
It kind of is.
Yeah, right. And your payment's not going to be cut in half like it once was, and your interest rate might not go to zero. And the credit counseling group's going to be judged based on their performance rather than, the advice that they give you. And so credit counseling really turned into a creditor-controlled nonprofit, I'm doing air quotes like you were before, industry that people think is there to help them, but in reality is mostly there to qualify them for their debt management plan or their repayment program.
Mm-hmm.
So it's changed a lot since the very beginning. And, there's going to be more change. Like right now, you'll notice that credit counseling programs really don't talk to people about debt settlement. And one of the reasons is because for years, the creditors that fund credit counseling programs told them if you talk to people about settling their debt for less than they owe, you're not going to get any money from us.
Yeah.
So
you can't serve two masters.
No. I mean, you call a credit counseling program and you say, let's talk about bankruptcy. Oftentimes, first thing you're going to hear is that's the last resort.
Yeah.
You don't want to think about that. You want to get enrolled in our program.
Because who's funding the credit counseling companies?
Right. The
banks. And do the banks want you filing bankruptcy? No, they do not.
Well, that department doesn't.
Yeah.
Because if you talk to a different department, this all-time story, this still blows my mind. So I was at Chase Bank, and not Chase. It was another large company. Anyway, I'm at their collection center, and I'm sitting in the office of the supervisor of the collection department, and she's on the phone, keeps ringing. She's picking up the phone, and she goes, file bankruptcy. Hangs up the phone. I said, I don't understand. I mean, I can help those people. And she goes, look, Steve, at the end of the day, I have to go in front of my manager and show my results. And people that file bankruptcy, they don't count against me. It's just easier.
It ain't her money.
No. It's like I said, it's all a game.
Don't hate the player.
That's right. So when you think that you're doing the right thing, you got to understand the only person you should be looking out for is you.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Next option.
So to circle back, because we mentioned when you call like Bank of America or a lot of these creditors, and you say, I can't pay my payment, and they direct you to credit counseling. So, they have a hand in that. Now, credit counseling is not all bad. It's not like credit counseling is, we're not saying it's not something that you should consider and look at, because there are benefits to enrolling in a credit counseling program. They're just not as good as they used to be.
Well, but they've got the same problem that we just complained about the Dave Ramsey approach, which is, I dare you to call a credit counseling program and they tell you to enroll in their program. I dare you to see if they tell you about how much you're going to lose in retirement savings because you signed up for their 5-year repayment program.
Is that a double dog dare or a triple
dog dare? That is a quadruple dog dare, because they're not going to tell you, if you sign up for our program, you're going to piss away $1.5 million in retirement, but sign here.
But that's not their job. They're counselors in name only.
I remember back in the day, one of the banks said, well, we need you to get certified in credit counseling, some type of program. Like certified in what? What do you...
Yeah. So credit counseling programs just, so here's the long and short of it. If you're in a position where you're paying all of your debt, right? And you're paying it on time, you've got enough cash coming in. It's not about the cash. It's just about you're saying, I want to pay this off in as fast as I can. No matter what, I'm paying it in full, but I'm paying 25% rates. I'm paying 30% rates. And I want this like an easy button that I can push, and my rates will go down, and I can make one payment, and all my credit cards are going to get closed because I'm really kind of into the Dave Ramsey way or whatever. And so I'm okay with all my cards getting closed, and I just want to pay this $50,000 off with lower interest and pay it off as fast as I can, right?
Yeah.
That would be what a credit counseling program could benefit you on if you wanted to enroll. There's other ways you can do that outside of a credit counseling program.
Oh, yeah, you can call the banks directly.
Yeah, you could. But in order to get better rates with the banks directly, you're typically going to have to essentially strategically default for at least a month, sometimes 2 months before they'll even get you into a department that you can say, hey, I need a better rate or whatever. But so there is some benefits to a credit counseling program. They're just not as great as they used to be. And the big gotcha with the credit counseling, and the reason why a lot of people drop out, credit counseling has a very high dropout rate. And here's the reason. The reason is because most people, when they think they have a debt problem, the more immediate problem they actually have is a cash flow problem. The debt is a big cause of the cash flow problem because of you're shelling out $1,500 a month or $2,000 a month. But really the issue is the cash flow problem, which is what wakes most people up to the debt problem. Steve was alluding to that at the very beginning of the call where they go, holy shit, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
That's because they have a bill due and they don't have the cash to pay it. And then they go, well, we got 50 grand in debt. We got to get rid of that. So they rush in, they get into some program, like a credit counseling program, and they say, oh, we're going to lower your rates because that's where people's brains go. Lower my rate, it's going to be better. But the problem with the credit counseling programs is, like Steve said earlier, they don't cut your payments in half anymore like they used to. And so oftentimes your payments in a credit counseling program could go up, or they could be usually about the same. Maybe they give you a little relief, but it's not going to be a big cash flow month-to-month relief. And that's why people end up dropping out, because they think, okay, I'm going to get my average rate from 25% to 6%, and that's awesome. But what they don't think about is that credit counseling plan is only amortizing that entire repay back over 4 years, 4.5 years. So even though the interest rate that you're paying and the overall interest is going to go down, you're going to have to repay all the principal at a much shorter time frame, right? So that tends to make your payment about the same as you were struggling to pay before. So people get into it thinking I'm lowering my rates, but after a few months they realize I still can't afford this payment either, and they end up dropping out. So that's the big gotcha with credit counseling. And then the other thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning was that's the same problem that happens when people get into consolidation loans. The same exact problem. They have a cash flow problem and a debt problem, but they're not thinking about the cash flow. They're only focused on how do I fix the debt problem, and they don't have the cash flow to support the solution that they're trying to do. And that's why people get stuck with these personal loans, these consolidation loans, thinking they're going to be lowering their rate and put it all into one payment. And then they end up charging those cards back up again because that consolidation loan payment is about the same or maybe just a little bit less of what their minimum payments were.
And they're still tight.
They didn't change their budget, change their lifestyle. And so the debt creeps back onto the cards. And I see this all the time. By the time people come to me, well, I got this 50 grand in credit card debt. And I also got this damn 50 grand in these multiple personal loans that I took out because I thought that would help me I took out to pay off my credit cards, right? And then a year, 2, 3 years later, the credit card debt is back, but the personal loans are still being paid on. And so all they did was kick the can down the street, and then the can somehow got a lot bigger when it got to the cul-de-sac.
Right. Well, you've had people that you've sent to that have said, I want to explore credit counseling. And you've said, call two or three companies and see what the payment's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm really big on getting information helps us make better decisions.
Right.
So I'm not a guy that would say, don't even look at credit counseling. What I do is I look at my client situation and I say, well, here's how a credit counseling program would probably look for you. And we can call a couple of these credit counselors and I can make a couple of recommendations. And it's a free call. Get the information, have them pull your credit report. They'll see what debt that you have, and they will tell you, here's what we can do in your situation. Here's what we can get your rates down. And so I have my client call, and then the client calls me back and I say, okay, send me over the quotes and we'll review them. And we'll talk about the numbers and we'll see if this can potentially work, yes or no. I mean, that's the whole reason clients call me, is to help them figure out the right strategy. And we can't figure out the right strategy if we're not going to look at any strategy. So we have to look at them all.
By the way, before I forget, I always am negligent in reminding people how they can contact you. So if you want to talk to Damon about your particular situation, you should reach him through his website, damonday.com, DAMONDAY.com.
I think I should change my tagline on the website to, I like the don't hate the player, hate the game. I like it.
It reminds me of that picture on your old website, the cowboy. I forget what he was saying, but you know the one I'm talking about?
The cowboy?
Yeah, it was.
How many versions of my website are we going back? I'm trying to remember.
This is like, 20 years ago.
The cowboy I had a cowboy on my website?
Yeah, it was like a meme picture.
I
It
don't
was
know.
kind of don't hate the player, hate the game. Well, that's how long ago it was.
Yeah.
So the last thing is that when it comes to credit counseling, that don't go into it
Oh,
thinking just because
Curly.
what?
It was Curly. The one thing that was Curly
Okay.
from with Billy Crystal and City
Yeah.
Slickers. It was City
City
Slickers.
Slickers.
All
Yeah.
right. Thank you, everybody, for coming down memory lane with us. I appreciate that.
So when it comes to credit counseling, one of the reasons why people have such a terrible success rate with credit counseling is because you're just making it, right? You're just making that payment.
Mhm.
And if you're behind and you go to credit counseling, most people can't afford the payment. So like you said, if you're not behind yet, but you're feeling like you might, or you want a lower interest rate, those are the best people to enroll because they still have, money.
Yeah.
But the idea of thinking that you're going to enroll in any program, I don't care what it is, where you're making a promise to repay for 5 years and you're hoping to make it limping along month to month. God forbid a tire goes out, the engine blows, a new water heater is needed, or some other catastrophe, because it's not going to work out.
Yeah. Well, and this is why it's an important exercise. This is why I take my clients through this process where we learn all the information about all these different strategies and how it would apply to their situation specifically. So not only so they can make a good decision, but no matter what we do is going to involve some kind of sacrifice, whether it's a credit score sacrifice, a lifestyle sacrifice. Something's going to have to give in order to flip your situation around the right way. And so it's not just about making the right decision. It's about over the next few years, while you're going through whatever strategy we decide to do, that you are confident that you made the right decision. So you're not constantly second guessing.
Right.
Should I have filed bankruptcy? I don't know. I never even looked at it. I didn't talk to the attorney. Maybe I should have tried this. Maybe I should have stuck with Dave Ramsey a little bit longer, or whatever it is. The only way you're going to feel confident in the decision is to know for sure you've researched everything and eliminated everything else. And by making a decision through process of elimination, you can move forward confidently knowing it's the right strategy and actually make it much more likely you'll be successful because you're not constantly second guessing whether you did the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
So segueing into debt settlement now, if credit counseling is not going to work for you. So Steve made a comment about, with credit counseling, you stop all your payments and you give one payment to the credit counseling company and they divvy it up to your creditors. Now, this is the way a lot of debt settlement companies are going to try to sell you a debt settlement program. They're essentially going to...
I think we can also lump in like the debt validation people too, because they have the same approach to what you're going to say.
Debt validation people are just scam. I lump them into the scam category.
Okay.
So there's that. But yeah, so here's what the debt settlement companies will try to do. They'll essentially try to sell, because they know they're competing. Because maybe you're probably talking to a credit counseling company. So the debt settlement people are going to try to compete against credit counseling the same way credit counseling tries to compete against debt settlement. It's about getting your business. It's not about helping you figure out what to do. So settlement is going to try to sell themselves as a debt reduction program or a debt consolidation program with lower monthly payments than you're going to get from credit counseling. And they can do that because with debt settlement, there's no such thing as a program, even though they tell you that there is. And the payments are just made up numbers.
Yeah, they're just arbitrary.
They just
I always
make
like the
them up.
fact when they say your payment's going to be $600. I can't afford that. Hold on a second. Your payment's going to be $400.
Yeah. Because unlike credit counseling, we explained with credit counseling, the creditors agree to the deal up front.
Yeah,
They're
you know what it
agreeing
is
to
up
it.
front.
They're getting paid up front. I mean, in fact, the creditors essentially run the credit counseling companies for the most part.
Right.
But with debt settlement, it doesn't work like that. The creditors are not getting paid any money anytime soon. The money is just going to essentially be collected by the debt relief company and held on to until a deal is maybe made down the road. So they can make up whatever payment they think sounds good to you, but it's not a real payment. If you're going to pay me $600 and I'm just going to hold on to it, and every month you give me $600, I have the power to say, okay, if that's hard, how about $500? How about 400?
Right.
I don't have to ask the creditor if they're okay with that because, again, there's no program. But this is a very easy sales pitch. And this is why a lot of people sign up into these programs, because as a salesperson, I can come to you. It's the easiest thing in the world to sell, right? I say, oh, here's your situation. Yeah. Oh, man, you're paying like $2,000 a month. You can't afford it. I understand. Well, hey, we've got a great program. We're A-rated. We're
That's
this,
right.
we're that. We've been around.
And you're the victim.
Yeah.
You know,
we've been around for 15 years. Here's what I can do for you. If you enroll in our program, I can take that $2,000 in payments and I can knock it down to $1,400. And then
you'll pay no interest.
Yeah. And then $75,000 that you owe right now, we've got really good relationships with the banks. Lie. And what we can do is we can probably knock that down to $45,000 or $50,000. And you're just going to give us $1,400 a month, and we should be done in right around 48 months, maybe 36 months, and it's going to be great. Now, if I'm a consumer and I'm going, wait a minute, this sounds awesome. I'm struggling to pay $2,000 a month. I'm maxed out on my cards. This guy's telling me that I can enroll in their program and only pay $1,400, and they're going to work with the banks, and then I'm only going to have to pay back $50,000 instead of $70,000 plus interest.
Mm-hmm.
Where's the doubt? Why wouldn't you sign up like immediately? It's going to save you $600 a month and get you out of debt in 3 or 4 years, and you're going to save $20,000 plus interest. So on the surface, nobody would say no to that if that's really all it was. Like if your bank legit went to you and said, all right, you owe us $70,000. We're just going to knock it off the top. You can just pay us back 50, and we're going to break that up into low monthly payments for 4 years. Nobody's going to say no to that if it was their bank actually offering that. But they don't tell you a lot of the downside with settlement. And I always describe, and I'm not saying settlement's a bad option. It's a good option in the right circumstances. It's a horrible option in the wrong circumstances.
And it's a horrible option for every creditor,
and
right? It's not a one size.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't, and that's the other thing. You don't have to, put all your cards, into, I don't want to call it a debt settlement program because again, let me reiterate, there is no debt settlement program. There's no program. Debt settlement is like jumping out of an airplane. Now, you have a parachute, but you never know 100% certainty it's going to freaking open, right? But that's what there is a risk. You are jumping out of a damn airplane.
Yeah.
It's no program. You're not, credit counseling's like you're in the airplane, but it's going to land. We're fine.
Maybe. Yeah.
For the most part. Well, you might fall out of it on the way down, but.
Right. There you go.
If you can hold on, it'll land eventually if you can stick with it. But debt settlement, you're going into it knowing you're jumping out of the airplane. So there are certain risks and certain things you have to be aware of, absolutely. And you can't go into a debt settlement program thinking it's a program and it's just going to lower my payment, which there is no payment, and I'm going to pay less. It could work out like that, but you could also splat on the pavement too if you jump out without knowing what you're doing. And who's packing,
you're the consumer.
And who packed your parachute, by the way? You should know who's packing that parachute.
If you're the consumer and you're panicked and you're listening to this, okay, I'm going to pay back less than I owe. I'm not going to pay any, I'm doing air quotes again, interest, and my debt's going to be gone in 4 years. The one thing that debt settlement program person didn't tell you, or the credit counseling person, or the Dave Ramsey person is, Bob, alternatively, instead of spending $45,000 on our program, taking 4 years, what if you just spent $2,500 on filing bankruptcy and your debt was gone in 100 days?
Yeah.
Nobody's telling people that.
Yeah. And again, that's why it's important to look at everything. So, with settlement, and I almost never recommend a settlement company. There are other ways to do. I don't like the way these companies operate for a lot of reasons I'm not going to get into on this podcast, but you don't have to enroll with a settlement company if you think you're in a situation where, you could really benefit from negotiating your debt and just kind of getting a reset. But there are some pitfalls to that. You definitely have to fall behind. There's chances of lawsuits. You need to be aware of that. Some creditors are more aggressive than others. It's going to hurt your credit. It's absolutely going to hurt your credit for a couple of years. So again, you have to weigh all the pros and cons. And then, Steve made a nice segue also now into bankruptcy, right? Because the way I like to evaluate bankruptcy for clients is, A, you start with the financial. Okay. How much money is it going to save me over a Dave Ramsey or a credit counseling or a debt settlement? Overall, how much money will I save? Number one. Number two is, how would a bankruptcy impact me both personally and professionally, potentially, right? Is there going to be any potential impact? What about my house? Am I precluded from filing a Chapter 7? If I wanted to file a Chapter 7, could I qualify for it? Yes or no? Maybe I make too much money. That might be a non-starter, right? So we have to look at all of these things. If I don't qualify for a Chapter 7, what does a Chapter 13 look like? Is that something I even want to consider? Oftentimes, the answer is hell no. And then sometimes a Chapter 13 is actually not a bad solution, because a Chapter 13 is a repayment type of strategy, kind of like a credit counseling program. You're just inside of a bankruptcy when you do it, and the creditors have to agree to whatever the trustee comes up with.
Well, it gives you the legal protections that no other program does.
Yeah. So sometimes it could be a good strategy. Sometimes it could be a not so good strategy. But again, the only way to know it's right for you is you have to look at everything, and don't, in my opinion, don't automatically dismiss a strategy just because you think you may know how it works. As Steve mentioned before, I've had lots of clients over the years that, will be on the first call and they're like, well, I just don't want to file bankruptcy. Okay,
Why
no
not?
problem.
Yeah.
Let's look at everything. And then by the time that we're done going through it, maybe meeting with the bankruptcy attorney, they go, I didn't realize it, but actually bankruptcy seems like pretty good deal. And again, I'm not saying bankruptcy is always a good deal. Sometimes it is a good deal, but you always have to evaluate it back to, let's say you find out you can qualify for a 7. You'll be able to keep your house if you have one. If you don't even own a house, it's not going to be that big a deal. And let's say you keep your cars. So, it's not one of these things where people are going to come into your house and start taking the TVs off the wall and, oh, this couch was, still financed, so we're taking that. It's not like that. So let's say we find out that you could keep all of your stuff, and in your specific situation, we find out it's going to cost you $2,200 to file a bankruptcy. And then we look at, well, how much debt do you have? If you have $100,000 in debt, how much is that going to cost you to Dave Ramsey your way out of that thing? If you could even do it, best case scenario, it might cost you $120,000. So then you start, that's how you evaluate.
And what's the future? What's your future loss by you taking the next 5 years or whatever, trying to repay this back instead of protecting yourself in the future for your retirement?
Well, you might not even have to go that far. You might stop at, okay, Dave Ramsey is going to cost me $120,000 more than the bankruptcy. So first question, is there anything about the bankruptcy that I learned that would cause me to say that is so bad for me personally that I would spend an extra $120,000 to avoid it, right? And of course, this is even before we talk about what's that $120,000 actually worth to you in retirement if you file the bankruptcy. Because then, to Steve's point, that 120 could be $1 million.
Right.
Everybody has a number.
Yeah.
Everybody has a number where, okay, that is not so bad that I would pay $500,000 for it, or I would pay but they also have a number the other way. Like, that is so bad that I would not want to do that if all I was going to save was $20,000 or whatever it is. But that's a good way to evaluate this stuff, is to look at, what would I save and what's the hassle, and is the hassle low enough to where the money I would save makes me want to do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And everybody's different. There's no right or wrong answer.
On that note, let's wrap it up here.
Seems like this podcast went way longer.
Oh, yeah, we're 45 minutes.
But
right now, somebody's commuted to work and back.
But it's good stuff. It's good stuff.
Oh, it's great stuff.
If you're getting phone call, if the debt relief organization is calling you more often than your creditors, just don't bother calling them back. It's a sales guy.
Yeah. And if somebody is reaching out to you and trying to sell you a debt program, the key word is they're trying to sell you their product. They're trying to sell you something, not that it's right for you. So if you want, to talk to somebody, talk to Damon, right? He's the best damn debt coach in the country. And talk through your situation.
Yeah, don't let them sell you. Just sell. You guys Steve, you sell them on me, and then no, but I mean, everybody's selling something, right? Let's just be real about it. The difference is, what am I selling with my coaching? Well, exactly what we talked about. You can have somebody that's in your corner that can walk you through this stuff and say, hey, I've been going through this stuff for 25 years. let's sit down, let's go over your situation individually, and let's figure out the best strategy to get you out of this mess. And then from there, we can decide, well, do we need to start talking to any of these companies or not? Most of the time, the answer is no. But for information purposes, a lot of times I will say, hey, I think you should call this company, or I think you should call this attorney, and here's what your questions should be, and here's what we're looking at. Go get that information, report back to me, and we'll discuss it.
Good stuff. I'm glad we got to talk all this through. And Damon, until next time, I will see you.
Peace.
Got a money question keeping you up at night? Well, don't just Google it. Get real answers from real people who actually know what they're talking about. Head to getoutofdebt.org/podcast to ask your question, and you might hear it on an upcoming episode. But hey, if you'd rather keep it private, Damon Day has your back. Visit DAMONDAY.com because getting out of debt is easier with the right help. That's getoutofdebt.org/podcast, where smart money questions lead to smarter money moves.